In a landmark development for North American energy markets, Canada has solidified its position as a global energy powerhouse in 2024, ranking as the world's fourth largest crude oil producer and fifth largest natural gas producer. The nation's oil production reached between 5.2 and 5.4 million barrels per day, a 6 to 10% increase from 2023. Alberta remains the heart of Canada's energy sector, with its oil sands operations driving national output to record heights. The United States has traditionally dominated as Canada's primary energy export destination, accounting for roughly 90% of oil exports. U.S. imports of Canadian crude reached 4.3 million barrels daily in July 2024, coinciding with the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion. Recent trade tensions have prompted Canada to pursue a more diversified export strategy. The completion of the Trans Mountain expansion project, boosting pipeline capacity to 890,000 barrels per day, has opened new doors to international markets, particularly in Asia. This enhancement comes as Canadian officials seek to reduce dependence on U.S. markets amid concerns over potential tariffs. China's Rang Sheng, a leading independent oil refiner, has established a presence in Calgary, Alberta. This move represents an expansion into the Canadian crude sector, particularly timely given the economic tensions between Canada and the U.S., including discussions of a possible 10% tariff on Canadian oil imports. Rang Sheng's entry marks an effort to secure long-term heavy Canadian crude supplies, using the expanded Trans Mountain Pipeline. The company's first deal involves purchasing crude from Suncor Energy, with deliveries scheduled to reach China by June. Rang Sheng has transitioned from delivered-at-place arrangements to free onboard contracts, providing greater flexibility in shipment management. To lead its North American operations, the company appointed Wang Jia as General Representative for America's procurement and trading. This strategic realignment in Canada's energy export landscape represents a significant shift in global energy trade dynamics. Here's a 1875-character news piece based on the input. In a significant shift in global energy dynamics, Canada's expanded Trans Mountain Pipeline is reshaping international oil trade patterns, with Chinese refiners emerging as key beneficiaries. The development comes as North American energy relationships face increasing strain under proposed U.S. tariffs. Rang Sheng, China's leading independent oil refiner, has established itself as a major player in Canadian crude markets, processing an impressive 800,000 barrels daily. The company has strategically positioned itself through partnerships with energy giants, including Suncor, Cenovus Energy, Canadian Natural Resources, Phillips, BP, and Shell. The timing couldn't be more crucial as Canada's relationship with its southern neighbor faces challenges. The Trump administration's proposed 10% tariff on Canadian oil and gas imports has accelerated Ottawa's pursuit of alternative markets, particularly in Asia. The Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, TMX, which became operational on May 1, 2024, represents a game-changing infrastructure project. The initiative has effectively tripled pipeline capacity from 300,000 to 890,000 barrels per day, creating a robust export route from Alberta to British Columbia's coast. The expansion's scope is remarkable. 980 kilometers of new pipeline construction, 193 kilometers of reactivated dormant pipeline, 12 new pumping stations, and 19 new storage tanks at key terminals. The West Ridge Marine Terminal in Burnaby has also been upgraded to handle increased tanker traffic. This transformative project, which began under Kinder Morgan's proposal in 2013, required significant government intervention to ensure completion. In 2018, facing mounting regulatory and legal challenges, the Canadian government purchased the pipeline for $4.5 billion and established the Trans Mountain Corporation to oversee its expansion. The timing of TMX's completion aligns perfectly with Canada's strategic pivot toward Asian markets. This shift not only diversifies Canada's export options, but also strengthens its position in global energy markets, reducing dependence on traditional U.S. routes. Here's a 1875-character news story based on the input. Canada's energy sector reaches new milestone as the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion finally delivers, but not without facing significant hurdles and questions about its future performance. The project, which underwent extensive regulatory scrutiny, had to meet 156 conditions from the Canada Energy Regulator, covering everything from environmental protection to Indigenous rights. In an eye-opening development, the project's costs skyrocketed from an initial $7.4 billion to a staggering $34 billion. The dramatic increase came from a perfect storm of challenges: regulatory delays, environmental issues, COVID-19 disruptions, and natural disasters, including devastating wildfires and floods. However, there's a silver lining in this costly cloud. Early operations have revealed promising market potential, particularly in Asia. China has emerged as a major player, purchasing over $2 billion in crude oil through the pipeline between May and November 2024. Japan and South Korea have also joined the buying spree, demonstrating strong Asian market interest in Canadian energy products. But the pipeline's performance hasn't quite hit the mark yet. Operating at 77% capacity during its first 8 months, it's falling short of the projected 83%. Experts don't expect full utilization until 2028, citing higher toll rates compared to alternative pipelines and shifting global market dynamics. Meanwhile, Canada's broader energy sector continues to flex its muscles. The nation exported an average of 4.2 million barrels of crude oil daily in 2024, generating approximately 124 billion Canadian dollars annually, representing nearly 16% of total exports. The United States remains the dominant customer, receiving 97% of these shipments, highlighting the deeply integrated North American energy market. The successful completion of this massive infrastructure project, despite its challenges, marks a significant step in Canada's energy diversification strategy. However, the road ahead requires careful navigation of environmental commitments, Indigenous relationships, and market demands to ensure long-term viability. Breaking news: Canada's energy exports reshape global markets. In a significant shift transforming North American energy dynamics, Canada has emerged as a powerhouse in global energy markets, with record-breaking exports signaling a new era of energy independence. The numbers tell a compelling story. In 2024, Canada exported $176.2 billion Canadian dollars in energy products, while importing just $39 billion, creating a massive trade surplus. While the U.S. remains Canada's primary energy customer, the winds of change are blowing strongly. For the first time, substantial moves toward Asian and European markets are evident. About 3% of exports are now heading across the Pacific and Atlantic, marking what experts call the beginning of Canada's global energy expansion. The Trans Mountain expansion is crucial in this transformation. Natural gas exports hit 8.66 billion cubic feet per day in 2024, generating 13 billion Canadian dollars. LNG Canada is set to revolutionize the game when it launches in late 2025. Canadian provinces are lighting up American homes like never before. Quebec led with 13.3 terawatt-hours, followed by Ontario at 13.9, with substantial contributions from other provinces. Prime Minister Mark Carney is pushing for broader market access, with support across party lines. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre advocates for projects like Energy East and Northern Gateway. The Indo-Pacific region represents a golden opportunity. 40 economies, over 4 billion people, and $47.19 trillion in economic activity, including 6 of Canada's top trading partners. In response to U.S. trade tensions, Canada is exploring Arctic pipeline routes for direct exports to Europe and Asia. The LNG Canada project, backed by Shell and PetroChina, will begin exports to Asian markets in 2025 from Kitimat, British Columbia. This strategic shift could reshape global energy markets for decades to come. In a significant shift of global energy dynamics, Canada's role as a key supplier to China is expanding rapidly, driven by infrastructure developments and international trade tensions. The completion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline in 2024 has revolutionized Canada's export capabilities, particularly to Asian markets. Trade Minister Mary Ang's recent discussions in Brussels underscore Canada's strategic move to diversify its trading partnerships beyond traditional allies. This comes as Canada navigates complex trade relationships with both the United States and China. Recent data shows a 22% increase in Canadian crude exports to China, reaching 184,000 barrels per day in 2024. This surge positions energy exports to potentially overtake agriculture as the primary trade component between the nations. The shift is notable given recent trade tensions, including reciprocal tariffs between Canada and China. China's growing appetite for Canadian heavy crude reflects a strategy to reduce dependence on Middle Eastern and American supplies. The pricing and refining advantages of Canadian oil make it attractive for Chinese buyers. Between May and November 2024, Chinese purchases of Canadian oil exceeded $2 billion. The trade landscape is complicated by ongoing disputes between China and the United States, creating both challenges and opportunities for Canada. As China seeks to diversify its import sources, Canada's stable political environment and rich natural resources make it an appealing alternative supplier. Looking ahead, Canada's expanding LNG capacity could position it as a major player in China's natural gas market. This potential growth comes despite recent tensions, where China imposed 100% tariffs on Canadian agricultural products, affecting over $1 billion in exports. The transformation of Canada's export profile to China represents a strategic pivot, moving from a diverse portfolio including gold, $3.93 billion in 2023, canola, $3.02 billion, and agricultural products, toward an energy-dominated trade relationship. This shift exemplifies Canada's adaptation to changing global trade dynamics. Here's a 1875-character news piece based on the provided content. In a significant shift in global energy dynamics, Canada is positioning itself as a major player in the international market, with new LNG facilities in British Columbia set to reshape the energy landscape. The LNG Canada and Kitimat projects represent a strategic move to diversify Canada's export capabilities beyond its traditional U.S. partnership. Beyond energy resources, Canada's vast deposits of critical minerals, including lithium, cobalt, and nickel, make it an attractive partner for China's tech and renewable energy sectors. However, this relationship faces complex challenges. Ottawa has recently implemented stricter controls on foreign investment in critical minerals, particularly targeting Chinese involvement, citing national security concerns. The agricultural sector presents another interesting dynamic. Historical patterns suggest that U.S.-China trade tensions could benefit Canadian farmers. During the 2018-2019 trade disputes, Chinese buyers turned to Canadian markets for canola, wheat, barley, and seafood. However, this opportunity comes with risks, as demonstrated by past diplomatic incidents that led to Chinese retaliation against Canadian agricultural exports. The evolving global supply chain landscape offers Canada unique opportunities. As companies seek to reduce dependence on both U.S. and Chinese markets, Canada could emerge as an attractive alternative, offering access to both North American and Asian markets. However, this requires careful diplomatic navigation. The recent U.S. tariff impositions have strained North American trade relations, pushing Canada to seek broader international partnerships. This strategic diversification reflects a deeper shift in the continental energy relationship, traditionally a cornerstone of North American trade. For Canadian policymakers, the challenge lies in balancing these opportunities with existing commitments, particularly under the USMCA trade agreement. While stronger ties with China could bring significant economic benefits, Canada must carefully manage its diplomatic relationships to maintain its crucial U.S. partnership while pursuing new trade avenues. Breaking news from North America's energy sector reveals a seismic shift in Canadian export strategy, marking what experts call a historic pivot away from U.S. markets. In an unprecedented move, Canada has unveiled a massive $6.5 billion aid package aimed at reducing its economic dependence on U.S. markets. The strategy allocates $5 billion to help Canadian exporters explore new international partnerships, with $1 billion targeting the agri-food sector. The implications for American consumers could be severe. The United States relies on Canada for approximately 4 million barrels of crude oil daily, 62% of total U.S. crude imports. Any disruption to this supply chain could trigger a dramatic spike in gas prices, potentially increasing by 75 cents per gallon overnight. Industry analysts point to a particular vulnerability in U.S. refineries, especially those in the Midwest and Gulf Coast regions. These facilities are specifically designed to process the heavy crude oil from Alberta's oil sands, making quick alternatives difficult to secure. This isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet, says energy expert Thomas Reynolds. We're looking at a fundamental reshaping of North American energy dynamics. The Canadian government's decision appears driven by recent trade tensions and tariff threats. The aid package includes $500 million in low-interest loans to help smaller businesses adapt to new market conditions, signaling a long-term strategic shift. What makes this situation concerning for U.S. interests is the limited availability of alternative heavy crude sources. While Venezuelan or Middle Eastern oil could theoretically fill the gap, these sources are more expensive and come with greater geopolitical complications. The move represents a significant departure from decades of established energy infrastructure cooperation between the two nations. As pipelines, rail networks, and regulatory frameworks face uncertain futures, both countries are entering uncharted territory. In today's breaking news, we're examining a major shift in North American energy dynamics that's reshaping international trade relationships. Here's why this matters to you and your energy bills. Canada has executed a strategic pivot that's sending shockwaves through global energy markets. With the Trans Mountain expansion, they've opened a direct pipeline to Asian markets, particularly China, Japan, and South Korea. This isn't just another pipeline. It's a game-changing move altering North American energy dynamics. Trump's aggressive trade policies have pushed Canada to accelerate its independence from U.S. markets. They're now actively building new partnerships based on multilateralism and economic diversification. This isn't temporary. We're witnessing a historic transformation in Canada's trade doctrine that will impact American consumers for decades. For U.S. households, this could mean higher prices at the pump and increased heating bills. The implications are serious. That seamless cross-border energy relationship we've taken for granted? It's under pressure. Unless there's a diplomatic reset, we might be entering a new era of uncertainty in North American energy trade. The U.S.-Canada relationship has been the backbone of North American economic strength. Now, that foundation is showing cracks, and we might see a very different energy landscape ahead. What's your take on this situation? Have you noticed changes in your energy bills? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Before you go, we'd love to hear your perspective. Drop a like if you found this analysis helpful, and subscribe for more coverage of energy politics and trade. Thanks for joining us today. For more analysis on similar topics, check out our related video showing now. Stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll see you in our next report.